to the review you've been looking for. This is my review show for Star Wars in review. Today we are starting with a very, very special place that is near and dear to my heart, something I grew up with. This is A New Hope, and my name is Kyle. I'm going to be your host as always. This is my channel, Project Potter. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't checked it out already, please check out Mr. Robot in review. And please also check out Wick Watch, which is the John Wick in review. There's going to be more reviews coming. Eventually MCU, eventually Batman. Good stuff coming. But this is the start of a series that is very near and dear to my heart. I've loved Star Wars pretty much my whole life, and I am going to be reviewing it today. Very similar to the other review formats of the show. We're going to have kind of a best actor, a score, a ranking. But yeah, this is New Hope. Okay, so Star Wars in review, the review you've been looking for. We are going to start it off with something called May the Plot Be With You. So Star Wars A New Hope, Episode 4. So we get the opening crawl here. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the evil Galactic Empire. During the battle, Rebel spies managed to steal the secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star. Anybody and everybody knows the Death Star. That shit is popping. This is an armored space station with enough power to destroy an entire planet. Pursued by the Empire's sinister agents, Princess Leia races home aboard her starship, custodian of the stolen plans that can save her people and restore freedom to the galaxy. And that is the opening crawl, and that is one of the better opening crawls of Star Wars. And anyone who's seen Star Wars knows every movie typically has an opening crawl, and this is the one that kicked it all off. So we get a slow pan down to Princess Leia's ship being chased by our Star Destroyer, and Star Destroyers never don't look cool. They always look amazing, and this was practical effects. This was 77, I believe. Hopefully I'm not wrong on that, but yeah, late 70s Star Wars A New Hope came out, and the effects hold up just as well here. This one I'm watching in 4K, but man, it looks still great, even so much time later. So the first two characters we meet are C-3PO and R2-D2. And C-3PO tells us there's no escape for the princess this time, and we are doomed. So not the best start for Star Wars. But the rebel ship is pulled into the Star Destroyer via a gravitational field or gravitational pull. The rebel soldiers are lining up to defend the shuttle door, the alleyway there. And we get the stormtroopers break in, and then we get a battle of the pew-pews because, all jokes aside, Skywalker sound is amazing, and the blasters, and these are all iconic sounds at this point, and we get a battle here between the Empire and the Rebels. So we get R2-D2 cutting into a side alleyway of the ship, and C-3PO kind of goes looking for him. We get a shot of Princess Leia inserting the hologram or the data chip into R2-D2. And C-3PO says, "Where have you been? I've been looking everywhere for you. You got to be more careful." Then we get a cut to Vader choking out a poor soldier, asking where the Death Star plans are. And he goes, "I know what you did with the plans." He's like, "Tell me where the plans are." The soldier says they understood the transmission for the plans, but Vader chokes him out and tosses him like a rag doll. Because that's how Vader do. And Vader doesn't give a shit. And he's just here for the plans, and he's here to wreck everyone. So Vader says, "I find those plans, I want the prisoners alive." Interesting bit there, because Vader showed a lot of mercy. Wanting the prisoners alive. Usually you think Vader's just kill everyone and kill everything, but not here. So the stormtroopers, they find Princess Leia. We get the set to stun scene, tongue twister. And they capture Princess Leia here, but she's already given the plans to R2-D2. Then we get R2-D2 and 3PO. They get in an escape pod. C-3PO says, "What secret plans? What secret mission?" And that's kind of his interaction with R2D2 here, so that's a funny little bit. And they escape in the escape pod. The Empire doesn't shoot it down because, hey, hold your fire, there's no life forms on that escape pod. It must have short-circuited. Really cool little bit there in the Star Wars universe. There may not have been life forms on there, but obviously there are droids on there, and that was kind of, whether Princess Leia thought of that or not, really great bit there, but the Empire thinks, don't worry about it, it's not worth shooting an empty space pod. Although you think no matter what, they would shoot the escape pod, because what is the risk of letting it go? I don't know. Anyway. So Princess Leia runs into Lord Vader, or Darth Vader, and she says, I don't know what happened to the plans, I don't know what you're talking about. I DK'd my BFF Jill. And he's like, I want to know what happened to those plans. And then he says, you are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away. And that's kind of an iconic line from Vader. Next scene we go to, one of the soldiers tells Vader, if we hold her prisoner, it's going to build sympathy for the rebellion. She'll die before she tells you anything. And Vader says, leave that to me. And it's like, well, damn. But then it's like, leave that to me as in you're not going to kill her, or leave that to me as in I'm gonna torture her. So we don't know yet. So the reporting officer reports to Vader, and he says the plans are not aboard the ship and no transmission was made. There was one escape pod, but there were no life forms. So Vader says they must have hidden the plans in the escape pod, send a team to the planet below to investigate. And I'm like, that Vader, he knows what he's doing. He figured that out pretty quickly, that the plans must be in the escape pod that we didn't shoot down. So let's go find them. So then we get C-3PO and R2-D2 in the desert of Tatooine. And there's an interesting bit here where C-3PO says, it seems we are made to suffer. But then C-3PO ends up being a little bitch. And he says, no more adventures. I'm going to go this way, you go the other way. And they get in a little fight here. And they kind of go their separate ways very briefly. C-3PO eventually ends up seeing a transport, and that's when we get the scene where C-3PO says, over here! And that's, I love, is it Anthony Daniels? I will probably edit this out, but if I don't edit this out, this is a fun little bit. I should know this, and I will look it up after, but who plays C-3PO? That's kind of an iconic scene, and that's something that's been burned in my brain. But the over here scene is with C-3PO there. So R2 is actually running into the Jawas, and this is kind of almost a creepier scene. Feels like almost like a different movie, and that's where they shock him and they take him captive. We get a nice little scene of R2-D2 going to the droid cemetery where he sees the trash can droid, the garbage droid that we see in a few of the movies, and then also a droid with one arm and just a bunch of messed up droids. And this is kind of a creepy scene, but this is what the Jawas do. And then, of course, they've also captured C-3PO earlier, and so then they run into each other. Their reunion is much shorter after when they just initially broke up. And he goes, R2-D2, it is you. And again, Anthony Daniels, I'm sorry, is the guy. I don't know if I said that earlier, but I love Anthony Daniels, so I know some people think C-3PO is annoying, but I mean, his lines are just, again, engraved in my brain after seeing the movie so many times. But at this part I've said, C-3PO is excited to see R2-D2, but he was just talking shit 2 scenes ago, so it's which one is it, C-3PO? Are you mad at R2-D2, or are you happy to see him? It's I don't know. It's just funny how that changes. So then we get a cool outside shot of the Jawas transport. This really cool, looks like a top-heavy vehicle with just a few wheels, but that's an iconic shot. The Jawas transport is really cool. Then we get the stormtroopers arriving at the escape pod, stating, someone was in this pod, let's follow the tracks here. Then the Jawas pull up to the home of Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and my boy Luke Skywalker, and really the main character of this entire saga, this series. It's now been named the Skywalker Saga, so pretty much for 9 movies. He's the main character, at least a big part of it. So this is where the Jawas show up, and we don't know if they've been going to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru for many weeks or months or years. They seem pretty familiar with it, but they kind of pull up there and they present their best findings to sell. Everything that they think is worth anything, they kind of showcase to them. And Uncle Owen tells 3PO he needs a droid who understands the binary language of moisture evaporators. And C3PO is like, "Oh yeah, that's how I started. I know all about that." And he says, "Can you speak Bocce?" And he says, "Oh, sir, Bocce was mine." And he goes, "Okay, shut up. I'll take this one." And this is kind of the long line of all the characters in Star Wars telling C3PO to shut up, which is pretty great. And he goes, "Luke, come over here." And then this is when Luke, in his really whiny voice, and this is kind of an iconic scene too, or a funny scene. He says, I was gonna go to Tashi Station and pick up some power converters. And it's like, okay, dude, stop being a little bitch, Luke. That's what Uncle Owen should have said. Stop being a bitch. But he says you can waste time with your friends when your chores are done. And he's like, ugh. And then he says, okay, and we'll take the red one. The red one sucks. The red R2-D2 unit sucks. So it starts going off. We leave R2 with the Jawas, and C3PO and Luke and Uncle Owen, and the red R2-D2 start going away. Or not R2-D2, but just the R2 unit. And then the red one just blows up. Just like malfunctions halfway there. And they're like, hey, what are you trying to pull here? This R2 unit has a bad motivator. And then they go, what about the blue one? We'll take that one. And C3PO says, that's in prime condition. I've worked with him before. So they take R2-D2. He kind of scoots over. And then C3PO says to him, don't you forget this. I don't know why I stick my neck out for you. I'm not so sure. But that's a little fun bit between C3PO and R2-D2. And then we get the scene where C3PO says, thank the maker. And he's getting like a bath, and he's just so excited to not be dirty and gross and rusty and get his joints oiled up. Don't know if that's what happens, but he's just looking to get in better shape. And Luke says, there's a lot of carbon coating on R2-D2. He says, you guys have seen some action here. That's when 3PO says, yeah, we've worked for the rebellion. And Luke's like, the rebellion? He's like, what? Against the Empire? He's like, what have you known? Have you been in battles? He's all excited. And Luke says, you've got something jammed here, real good. And then we get the Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi, You're My Only Hope scene. And this is an iconic scene across all cinema, really, and just probably maybe the most famous scene of Star Wars history. Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi, You're My Only Hope. The hologram that R2 plays, the Princess Leia transcribed right before she got captured. And Luke's like, I don't know what this is. I don't know. But Luke goes, Obi-Wan, I wonder if she means old Ben. And then I'm like, why would Ben Kenobi, why would he keep the same last name? If you're trying to go undercover or you're trying to stay away, don't be Ben Kenobi. Be like Ben Smith, Ben Johnson, or, But nope, Ben Kenobi. Just change Obi-Wan to Ben. And it's like, we won't question it though. So that's when Luke reveals, there's a restraining bolt here that's preventing R2 from playing the whole message. He takes the bolt off, and then the message goes away. We don't know if R2 is hiding this from him, or what's going on here. And so Luke needs to leave, and then C3PO says to R2, no, I don't think he likes you at all. No, I don't like you either. So Luke brings up Kenobi at dinner with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and, he says... yeah, do you think they mean old Ben? And Uncle Owen's immediately like, I need you to take that droid and erase its memory in the morning. And Luke's like, okay, dude, just asking. Like, I don't know why you're so defensive about it. But he says, did you know, like, an Obi-Wan Kenobi? And he goes, Uncle Owen says, he died about the same time as your father. And so Uncle Owen tells Luke, he needs him for Harvest this year, and then next year he can go and join the Academy. Is he talking about the Jedi Academy? Probably. We'll see, but we don't really know. Luke doesn't know anything about the Force or the Jedi right now, so We're not really sure what he means by that, but he goes, next year. He's like, I need you for the harvest this year. So R2 ends up running off, and Luke and 3PO find him near the Sand People the next day. And they end up ambushing Luke, and they knock him down. And then we get Old Ben, who shows up and makes just the dumbest, most stupid sound I've ever. He's like, ooh! And that's like enough to scare the Sand People. Like, they just don't like ooh sounds, apparently. And so he makes that sound, and the Sand People go away. Manages to scare them off, and he said, he picks them up, and he's like, I'm sorry, this droid's just looking for his old master, Obi-Wan. And then Obi-Wan or Ben, he says, that is a name I have not heard in a long, long time. And Luke's like, oh, do you know him? Do you know Obi-Wan? And he's like, of course I know him. It's me. He's like, idiot. Obviously, how many Kenobis do you know? So they go to a nearby hut or nearby home where Obi-Wan says, your father was the best pilot in the fleet and a good friend. And then he explains to Luke, he says, the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. And then Obi-Wan just kind of slaps R2, just hits him, and then the full message is revealed. And so this kind of makes me think that R2 is just holding the message for Obi-Wan, which he kind of says, and C-3PO hints at he's holding the full message for his master. Obi-Wan just smacks him on the head, and then the message starts playing. And that's where Princess Leia says, this is our most desperate hour. I fought with you along in the Clone Wars, and now I need your help. And she says they got to go to Alderaan. And he says to Luke, hey, you got to come to Alderaan with me. And he goes, Alderaan, I'm not coming with you. I've got to get home. It's late. Luke's like, yeah, I got to go do my homework. And they're like, okay, don't worry about it. So we cut to the Death Star, where there's a meeting amongst the generals, or the important soldiers here. One dude is like, any attempt against the space is futile. He's like, no one's going to attack us. This is a pristine base. Lord Vader says, this technical achievement is nothing compared to the power of the Force. And this is when the guy says, please, Lord Vader, your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes. And I was like, this is a bad move, dude, because you're about to get Force choked, and he does. And then that's when Vader has his great line where he says, I find your lack of faith disturbing. And he's choking him out. Amazing scene. And then Tarkin goes, Vader, release him. And then he lets go, and he's like, all right, I'm not going to question you again. I'm like, my bad. So Obi-Wan and Luke find the slaughtered Jawas at their compound or their transport, and that's when Luke realizes that the stormtroopers killed them, and they would have traced them back home. And then that's when he goes home in a speeder. And then, anyone want a barbecue? Seriously though, his Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru are torched. And they must have had a flamethrower, apparently. Stormtrooper with a flamethrower. I haven't seen that, I don't think, in a movie yet, but they burned everything. And this is where we get John Williams' amazing theme, amazing sound here. And then we get the TIE Fighter sound. And that was probably a terrible impression, but the TIE Fighter is amazing. And we get Vader interrogating Princess Leia. And she's like, I'm never going to tell you anything, blah, blah, blah. Kind of a quick scene. And then we get Luke and Obi-Wan. He says, I want to learn the ways of the Force like my father. He goes, there's nothing here for me. So basically, they die. And he's like, you know what? I didn't want to be here anyway, so it's all good. So then we go to the Mos Eisley spaceport. And this is the amazing line where Obi-Wan says, you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. And that's probably one of the most famous lines in Star Wars history. And so they get on the speeder, and they go over to the cantina, and then a group of stormtroopers stop them. And that's when Obi-Wan uses the Force, and he kind of waves his hand. And he says, "You don't need to see his identification. These aren't the droids you're looking for. He can go about his business. Move along." And the stormtrooper repeats each line there. And Luke is like, "How did you get by them? I thought we were done for." And he says, "The Force can have a strong influence on the weak-minded." And he's like, "Are you sure we're going to find a pilot here, like to get to Alderaan?" He's like, "I don't know." And Obi-Wan says, "Some of the best pilots can be found here." So then we get a shot of Chewie at the bar. We don't know Chewie yet, but he is there, and I didn't pick up on this the first like 30 times I watched this movie. And there's a shot of Luke where he's standing there, he's trying to get a drink, and then the guy comes up to him with a pig nose, and he says he doesn't like you. And Luke's like, "Okay, I'll try and be careful." And he's like, "I don't like you either." And then Luke's like, okay, don't worry about it. He's like, I'll keep my distance. And he goes, "You'll be dead." And then that's when Obi-Wan, he pushes Luke into a table, and then Obi-Wan takes out his lightsaber, slices his hand off, and everyone kind of looks at him and goes, "Okay, we're not going to mess with you anymore, dude." And then, hello, Han Solo. Harrison Ford comes in and Han Solo, and this is where the movie really picks up because it's like a whole different movie at this point. And Han Solo is one of the best characters ever in Star Wars. So Harrison Ford just crushes it as Han Solo here. So they're talking about they need a pilot, they need a ship, and Obi-Wan is like, we need a ship as long as it's fast. And Han goes, "Fast ship?" He goes, "You ever heard of the Millennium Falcon? It's the ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs." And more information now tells us that the parsecs is actually a measure of distance and not a measure of time. But at the time, you're like, "Oh, 12 parsecs, that must be pretty fast." We'll get more into that when we review Solo down the line. Han says, "I've outrun Imperial starships." He says, 10K, and I'll get you there. Obi-Wan and Luke is like, 10K, we can get our own ship for that much. He's like, "Forget it, we'll figure it out." And then Obi-Wan says, 2K now, or 2,000 now, and 15 when we reach Alderaan. And Han's like, 17K? He's like, "You got yourself a deal." He's like, "What's the problem?" He's like, "Just passengers?" He goes, "What's the cargo?" "Just passengers and no questions asked and no Imperial distractions." And Han's like, "Well, that's the hard part, dude. I can't just get you out of, all the Empire." But he agrees to it, and they go about their way. And then we get a good little bit here where Obi-Wan is walking with Luke outside of the cantina, and he says, "Well, you have to sell your speeder." Like, you got to sell everything you have to make up for it. But we are where we are. We get a Han Greedo scene. I don't care about this scene personally. It's kind of stupid. I don't know why everyone makes such a big deal out of it. Han shot first, blah, blah, blah. Han shoots Greedo. It's a good little acting bit where he's got his hand up on the wall and he's kind of playing it off while he's undoing his gun in the other hand. And he shoots Greedo. Kind of stupid. We then get a horrible Han and Jabba scene. Just a terrible, it just looks awful. Especially, and it doesn't fit in the movie at all, really. Especially when he steps over Jabba's tail. It looks just terrible. And I put in here, he says, "Jabba, you're a wonderful human being." And I think I read in the behind the scenes that they originally thought Jabba was going to be a human. That's why he said that, but they just kept the line in there. It doesn't make any sense. And I put in here, I love the original trilogy. Till I die, this trilogy is almost perfect to me, but not every scene is a winner, and that's true here. So the stormtroopers find the Falcon, they ambush it, so Han says we got to make a break for it. They kind of run in there. Luke is saying, "Hey, why didn't you outrun them? I thought this thing was fast." And Han says, "Watch your mouth, kid, you'll be floating in space." And then I put in here, light speed will never not be cool. And this is where they get the jump to light speed or jump to hyperspace. Always amazing in Star Wars, no matter what scene. And they do different things about that in the newer movies. But, even in this original one, light speed looks amazing. And that, flash of light beforehand, always amazing. So we cut back to Tarkin being like, "Yo, check this out." And this is when they're demonstrating the Death Star. And that's when they have Princess Leia there, and they say, tell us what planet it's going to be on. And she says Dantooine. And they're like, we don't believe you. And then they just blow up Alderaan. And they just destroy Alderaan, which is her home planet, apparently. So we cut back to the Falcon, where Han says, we should be good. Don't everyone thank me at once. He goes over Han's training, and he's like, you know what? Luke's like, you don't believe in the Force, do you? And he's like, it's a lot of simple tricks and nonsense. And Obi-Wan is like smiling at him. He's like, check this out. And he puts the blaster helmet on Luke, and Luke's like, how am I going to do this? I can't see with the blaster shield down. And Obi-Wan tells him to stretch out with his feelings, and he fights the remote with the blaster shield down, and he kind of hits it. Han's looking a little surprised, but he says, you know what, good against a remote is one thing, good against a living is another. So he's still not entirely on board. So the Falcon finishes the jump from hyperspeed. They arrive at what used to be Alderaan. They're like, what's going on here? Where's Alderaan? And Han's like, oh, it must be an asteroid field. But he's like, there's no way they could destroy a planet. They would need way too much firepower, way too many fighters. They don't know what's going on here. Obviously, they don't know about the Death Star weaponry. So they run into a lone TIE fighter, and they said, what's he doing all up this way? That's weird. Let's follow him. And then they start leading him towards the Death Star. And then there's this great shot where he goes, oh, they're going towards that moon. And then that's when Obi-Wan goes, that's no moon. And that's when we get the Death Star. So they get too close, they follow the TIE fighter, they get too close, they get the gravitational pull, and then they're saying, like, full thruster's back, and he's like, I can't do anything, we're getting pulled in by the Death Star. And they get captured there. So the Falcon gets sucked into the gravitational pull. The Empire says here that the codes match the ship leaving Mos Eisley originally, so they said, let's go check out the ship. The stormtroopers board the ship. They said there's no one aboard. This must be a decoy. Vader says, let's get a scanning team in there to see what's going on. The scanning team is just more troopers with like these huge cubes, which makes no sense, but they go in there. It turns out that the crew is hiding in the cargo ship that's used for smuggling there, but they used it to hide in the cargo hold. So they actually get out. They jump the stormtroopers, knock them out, or kill them maybe, and they put on the stormtrooper outfits, and then the stormtroopers come out there as they're dressed as the stormtroopers. It's revealed here that we just need to remove one of the 7 power stations to disable the tractor beam to escape, and so they bring in Chewie to kind of like a control panel or a main panel here. And Han says, they take up the helmets. Han says, where'd you dig up that old fossil? Because Obi-Wan kind of goes off to do his own thing. And Luke's like, he's a good man. He's brought us this far. Like, trust in Obi-Wan. And eventually Han and Luke dress up. They put the handcuffs on Chewie. And they say, I think I know what he's doing. We're going to try and, transport Chewie to a different section here to move on the ship. And C-3PO and R2 says, what should I do? And they say, Han says, lock the door and hope they don't have blasters. So Han and Luke attempt to transfer Chewie as a prisoner. They just end up murdering everyone in the first room that they get because they don't believe them. We get this amazing scene where the guy is kind of radioing up, and Han says, everything's under control, situation normal. The guy goes, what happened? And he says, hit a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. And he goes, thank you. How are you? And the guy says, we're sending a squad up. And he goes, negative. We have a reactor leak here. Give us a few minutes here to lock it down. Large leak, very dangerous. And the guy goes, who is this? What's your operating number? And then Han just shoots the console when he says, boring conversation anyway. And he says, Luke, we're going to have company. Amazing scene there. So Luke goes to see Leia, or opens the prison door, which apparently is just very easy to open. And that's when she says the great line of, aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper? And he goes, huh? Oh, the costume. He takes off the mask here. And then he goes, no, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you. I'm here with Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then they start going on their way. Vader reveals, Obi-Wan is here. I've not felt a presence like this since I was with my old master. He goes, I must face him alone. So the stormtroopers arrive. They start shooting. Luke asks 3PO if there's another way out of here. He says no. So then Leia ends up shooting a hole in the side, and she goes, okay, we got to go into the garbage. She says somebody has to save our skins. They all jump into the garbage scene. Han before that says, a wonderful girl. He goes, I'm either going to kill her or I'm beginning to like her. Then we get probably my favorite scene of this movie, and then of maybe the original trilogy, the incredible garbage scene. For some reason, I always remember this movie growing up, where it's just incredible, where they go down there, they're in the garbage. It's really cool. Turns out there's something like living there, like a snake or some sort of thing, that actually ends up bringing Luke underwater, and it ends up kind of choking him out before they get him free. There's an eyeball that pops up. We don't ever know. We don't ever see this creature in full, but it's just something lurking under there. But between that creature lurking and just the aesthetic of like garbage, and then they start to close the garbage where it starts to compress everything. The walls are closing in, and they're trying to get like this big metal pole to stop it, but in reality that would just shatter anyway. But they're just doing anything they can to not get squished. Han has a great line where he says, we're all going to be a little bit thinner. But Luke is calling up to 3PO. He's like, 3PO. He's like, turn off all the garbage compactors. And 3PO is like hiding in a closet. The stormtrooper comes in, and they're like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And 3PO's like, he's a madman. And they all walk away. There's one guy being left on guard. He's like, hey, I need to take R2-D2 to do maintenance, to reset the circuits or whatever. And the one stormtrooper on guard is like, all right, that's fine. Even though he should have just said, like, you need to stay here. We don't know, like, if you're involved or no, you can't leave this room. He just lets them go. So once he goes away, R2-D2 like hacks into the wall, and then 3PO is finally hearing Luke. He's like, oh, I forgot I had this thing. And then he's like, 3PO. He's like, shut everything down. And then 3PO is like, oh, okay. He's like, shut them all down. At the last second, the walls are closing in. R2-D2 shuts it down. And then great scene where everyone's so excited. And Luke is like, we did it, 3PO. But it sounds like they're dying. So there's a great scene where 3PO is like, listen to them, R2, they're dying. He's like, I was too late, curse my body. And it's like, no, they actually survived. Luke is like, dude, we're fine, it's all good. So we cut to Obi-Wan, who's sneaking around. He actually cuts the power to the tractor beam and sneaks around the edge here, but then the stormtroopers come back in, and then he puts the kind of the lever back up. So I would assume he's killing the tractor beam. I don't know why he puts the lever down and back up, but maybe just a weird scene there. So Luke and Leia trying to escape here. We get like kind of a Tarzan jungle scene where it's the Star Wars music playing and the bridge is incomplete, and he swings across. He like takes his belt off and swings across. Very heroic scene. Obi-Wan finds Vader here, and I'm like, yo, how long have you been waiting for Obi-Wan? Like, because Obi-Wan walks around, he's been like kind of going around the base for a while, and Vader, it's kind of a funny shot because Vader's standing there with his lightsaber out, and he's just like he's been chilling for like hours. And it's like, was he just like was waiting there, and he was just like looking at his watch, like wondering when Obi-Wan was going to show up. But nevertheless, they show up, and Vader says, when I left you, I was but a student, but now I have become the master. Obi-Wan says, only a master of evil. And they kind of start going at it with the lightsaber here. Obi-Wan says, if you strike me down, I should become more powerful than you can ever imagine. And they start dueling it out. This brings the stormtroopers guarding the Falcon to kind of go over, because they want to see what's going on over there, because through the doors they see Obi-Wan and Vader fighting. So they all go over there, which just seems like a terrible plan, but stormtroopers aren't the brightest. So they all go over there and check out the fight, and this kind of opens up for the crew who has gone to the hangar, back to the hangar, to run to the ship there. That's when Vader strikes down Obi-Wan, and then Luke is like, Obi-Wan, no! And then that's when everyone starts, the stormtroopers turn around and start firing. And then that's when we hear Luke get Obi-Wan force listening or force telling him as a force ghost, run, Luke, run. That's when Luke runs. And this is kind of Obi-Wan being a deeper connection to Luke here throughout the rest of the movie and our introduction to force ghosts. So they let the Falcon. The Falcon tries to flee. We get Han and Luke on the guns there, which is a really cool scene as the TIE fighters are escaping. Han and Luke are kind of taking them out. That's a really cool scene with the rotating chairs. And then Luke and Han have this back and forth, asking what they think about Leia, because they're both kind of into her. So that's a good bit there where Han's like, you ever think she would fall for a guy like me? And Luke's like, no. He's like, yo, back off. I'm into her. Any guy that's been into the same girl with his friend will relate here. So then we get them going to a base here. I didn't write down the base, but they're going over the plans for the Death Star, or how to take out the Death Star. There's a really cool scene here where they take R2's plans and they say, the target area is 2 meters wide. It's an exhaust port. It has to be a direct hit, but if you hit that, it's going to trigger a chain reaction. It's going to blow up the whole station. And everyone's like, that's impossible. And Luke's like, no, I used to hit Womp Rats when I was, back home. And everyone's like, all right, dude. But Luke is like, yo, I got this. So they sent a bunch of X-Wings out there. This is when Vader says, this will be a day the Empire long remembers. It has seen the end of Kenobi, and it will see the end of the rebellion. And Luke and Han exchange before they head out there. They have an exchange where Han's like, I'm leaving. I gotta do my own thing. And Luke is like, I can't believe you're turning your back, on the rebellion like that. He's like, you're a really good pilot. We could use you out there. And he's like, I gotta do my own thing, kid. So they're like, all right. So they go out. We think Han is just off doing his own thing. So we get the final battle here where the X-Wings are going. There's 5 or 6, I think, different X-Wings, and they make some damage, but they all end up getting shot out. And then eventually they're going in between the crevice there, which is a really cool shot. And eventually Vader determines that the TIE fighters they're too small for the turbo cannons or the big cannons. So the TIE fighters need to go in there and individually take them out. So Vader's like, I'm going to do it myself. So Vader gets in his badass ship and with 2 TIE fighters next to him, and he ends up taking out the other guys. And then right when he's about to take out Luke, he locks him in there. That's when we see Han come out of nowhere with the Millennium Falcon, and he shoots the TIE fighter next to him, blows it up, and that causes the other TIE fighter to bump into Vader's ship. And Vader goes spinning way out of control. And this is kind of dramatic, but it's a cool scene where Han's like, you're good, Luke. He's like, let's blow this thing. And so that leaves Luke the shot to take down the shot. Goes directly down. Anyone who's seen the movie a million times will see the 2 shots go down into the hole there. And then they all fly away. The Death Star blows up. Really, really cool, iconic shot. And Han says, great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million. And that's when Obi-Wan talking to Luke again after he does it. He says, remember, the Force will be with you always. And so they blow up the Death Star. And in the ending sequence here, they just get the medals. Really cool end scene here. There's kind of a smile. There's a wave to the crowd. End credits. That's A New Hope. Okay, so a score for this one. The original trilogy is so good, but knowing that we have Empire and Jedi coming up there, I think both those movies are superior to this one, but New Hope is just so special. I'm going to give this one a 9.6 because I think it's just really, really good, and considering this was the first one and this had to lay the foundation for the world and the universe, George Lucas does an amazing job here of just setting all of that up. And New Hope holds up. It's one of my favorite movies. So, the character, the story, the plot, there's so much happens in here between Vader's introduction, Luke's journey, the Death Star. We get everything about the Rebels and the Empires, and it's great stuff. So 9.6 is what I'm going with. and so the Force is strong with this one. So this one is going to be whoever I thought was best in this movie, best actor, actress. This one has got to be Harrison Ford as Han Solo. Han Solo just, throughout this original trilogy, just kills it. Just takes over the screen, really. And even though Luke is the main character, Han, I think, or Harrison Ford is a better actor here. And every line he has is so good, and we'll see more of that in Empire. And he's just so good, and you're holding on to every line he says, and his chemistry with all the characters, especially with Leia down the line, really, really great. He's that scoundrel, that bad boy, that he's just so engaging and charming, and you just root for him no matter what he does. So Harrison Ford, I think, gets the Force is strong with this one award here. Alright guys, and that's it. So that's the inaugural episode of the review you've been looking for. This is going to be the Star Wars in review. We are going to do every movie here. Yes, that does include Solo and Rogue One, 2 movies I really like. And yeah, that's going to be it for A New Hope. Please join me next week. We're going to be doing Empire Strikes Back. I know pretty much everyone's favorite Star Wars movie, might be mine included. I'm not sure. I love all the Star Wars movies, except maybe the prequels, but maybe my mind will change on that when I look into it a little deeper. But yeah, thank you again for joining. Please check out my other review shows here on this channel. My Mr. Robot in review show, Hello Friends. Please check out Wick Watch, which is the John Wick in review. The MCU review is coming, I promise. I don't know when, but we're going to figure that out. But yeah, until next time, friends, may the Force be with you.